Hey everybody, welcome back to Ravenstead. It's time for another build. Got tile number 10 of the Hidden Valley series coming together here. Wanted to go up in elevation, so I'm adding an extra layer to this tile and then matching it up to its neighbor tile. I'm going to use a craft knife here. I don't cut myself, so don't worry about that. Just going to make those cuts right on the edge very carefully and match those two pieces up. And then we'll get into texturing the rest of the tile. Just going to contour in a little bit with a hot wire cutter and then dress that up with a craft knife. You do this whole part with the craft knife, you really don't need that hot wire cutter. You just go in, carve away what you don't want. So I got a pretty good match there on the two tiles. I'm going to do a little texturing with this brass brush. I like to use a brass brush versus a steel brush. It doesn't cut quite as hard. I'm being very careful there on that very edge. I don't want to over texture it, round it off so it doesn't match. Use a little bit of aluminum foil rolled up in a ball, and that'll put a little bit of texturing on the foam. I want to protect that factory surface on the bottom piece where I'm going to be doing my hot gluing, so I can texture the rest of that. And then we'll start putting these layers together. Just tack that down. You could use PVA glue or construction adhesive for this. That works fine too. And once I get these hot glued in, I'm going to run a couple of long deck screws up in there. Not really to hold it together. The glue does a fine job of that, but it does give it a little bit of weight. I wanted a little bit of structure on this tile. The Hidden Valley has a few structures on it. It's got an abandoned mine and a footbridge that we made as scatter terrain. And I wanted a little ramp here that eventually is going to tie into, I think, a catwalk on some of the higher elevations of the next few tiles. Now I'm going to cut off a couple of planks here. So I just used thin strips of XPS foam, and I've textured those with a wire brush to give them a wood grain appearance. And then I remembered to black out this area underneath. So a mixture of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint. I'm just going to go in there where I'm not going to be able to get to later on. So working a little smarter now. I've learned my lesson. It's no big deal if you forget. You just kind of squish it in there. Hot glue does work on wet paint, by the way. It's a little messy, a little bit more slippery, but it does hold just fine. We'll plank up this little ramp. That's going to be a great place for little critters to hide underneath later on. I'll have to decide what's going to be living under there. Maybe groundhogs. So now that we've got that ramp built, we'll just go ahead and black out the rest of the piece. That mixture of Mod Podge and paint really helps to strengthen the foam. Gives it a little bit more durability. And once that's dry, we'll start doing our dry brushing. So our first dry brush paint here is going to be a slate gray, just a dark gray. And I'll even run that over the flat surfaces too. And then a little bit of a lighter gray, and then a brown, a medium brown for the wooden parts. And then I dab a little bit of that just to be consistent from tile to tile with our painting scheme. That's a very light brown. Go in with a little bit of light tan on all the rock surfaces, and then we'll hit the wood with that as well. It gives us a really cool weathered wood look. So all the woodwork in this valley is pretty weathered. Some of it's even rotten. We get a little bit of green hue in here. And you know we got to have our rotten plank. We'll get to that. That's been an ongoing joke with some of our previous videos. I'll do some washes here. I do a wet on wet technique. So I kind of I let this segment run a little long, fewer edits, so you can kind of get a sense of how wet this thing is, how much wash I use. That's a little bit of green acrylic paint mixed with water, and I'm just dabbing it on here and there wherever it catches my eye. So just kind of let go and have fun with it. Just get in there. And these washes, since they're really diluted, they mute down pretty easily. We'll use a Vallejo rust wash right out of the bottle here and just sprinkle a little bit on. That was a little bit much, but that's okay. We can work with it. So I'm actually kind of using the piece as a palette, so I can go in with a brush and borrow a little bit from here and there and put it where I need it. And once those washes dry out, we'll be ready to do some flocking. So I'll get to that here in just a sec. Paint in some PVA glue. I did water that down just a little bit, help it flow on. I didn't want it to be too thick. That's going to be our rotten plank there for sure. I'll leave a few gaps here and there too. So I'll sprinkle on some fine flocking, knock off the excess, and then we'll go on to the next step. I like to build up the textures with my flocking. So the next one, I'll be using a homemade mixture of preserved moss and yellow flower flocking. And this is matching up the textures of the rest of the tiles in this series. There we go. Just kind of tap this on. This stuff's a little bit more coarse, so kind of have to press it down a little bit to get the texture that I want. Then we'll go in with a little bit of watered down PVA glue, dab that on here and there, and then some medium flocking. That's a great Woodland Scenics product. I really like the medium flocking. You gotta press it down just a little bit, and that's all textured up. Now we're ready for some shrubs and bushes. Get some clump foliage in here. So I'm using hot glue. I like to use hot glue when I can. If I'm doing a lot of builds, it works pretty quickly. You gotta get all those strings off of there though. That is a little annoying. Little lichen going in there. That clump foliage comes in pretty big clumps, so you can just break it down in the size that you want. It's great for hiding your mistakes too. I had a little seam that didn't look quite right there, so a big bush goes in. I can see that glue string. We're going to get that later. Not a problem. That little dark hole there, if we have our groundhog living under there, he's got to have something to hide behind. We'll just plop a bush in there. Now the two pieces are matched up. We're just about done. I'm going to add one more bush to kind of tie the two pieces together. And let me go ahead and spin this for you and get a closer look. There it is, tile number 10 of the Hidden Valley. Got our ramp running up. And the rotten plank. There it is. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. It's been great hearing your ideas and reading your comments. If you get a chance, check out my Patreon page. We'll get enough patrons going, we'll start doing some terrain giveaways. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.